Hello everyone, this is Mumbo and welcome back to another Minecraft video, and in this one we're going to take a look at how to build big projects in Minecraft. Now this is one of those things that I've seen popping up a whole bunch down in the comment section. A lot of people ask me, how do you go about building the crazy things that you do in your episodes? And I'm going to try my best to summarise that process in a short and concise video that hopefully all of you will find relatively interesting. So let's crack on. Funnily enough, building big projects isn't about hopping into a world and just getting down to business and starting work. Unfortunately, you have to do a bunch of things before you actually start placing the blocks to actually do the big project. Now the pre-build stage is arguably one of the most important things, and what you have to do is you have to sit there and think, how much time am I willing to commit to this project? And then you want to work out how much time the project is going to take, double it, and that will give you the realistic answer. If the time willing to commit to the project is less than the time taken to do the project, then you have to think, maybe I either shouldn't do the project, or potentially I should scale back the size of the project. If the time willing to commit to the project is bigger than the time taken for the project to be completed, then you have to think, good, okay, I'm ready to go, let's crack on with this one. Next up, we've got the planning stage, and this is by far the most important stage of your entire project timeline. Unfortunately, if you mess this up, then sadly your entire project is probably going to be messed up. Even if you do manage to budget and it just about works, sadly it would have been much better if you had actually planned it out and worked out exactly what you were going to be doing beforehand. So the first step of the planning stage is to work out where are you actually going to be building this thing. Now obviously this varies in difficulty depending on the size of the project. If you're building a gigantic city, you're going to have to be extremely picky about where you place that thing, whereas if you're building a small tree farm, then it's not going to be too difficult to find a suitable location, but you're going to have to go out exploring, finding suitable areas, measuring them out, and of course if the area is too small for your project, then you're going to have to go, nope, that's not suitable, and go out exploring a little bit more. It can be very time consuming, but trust me, once you find the perfect area, it's going to make your project 10 times easier. This next point may seem a little bit backwards, but I would say you should build as much of the project as possible in a creative world before you place any blocks in the survival world, and this is especially important with redstone contraptions. Now the simple reason for this is, creative mode is considerably easier. You have access to all of the blocks in Minecraft, you can fly around, you don't have to worry about gathering resources or placing down scaffolding blocks or anything like that, and if you have any problems or issues with your build, they're incredibly easy to fix. Doing this also helps massively with the first point that I mentioned in the planning stage. If you know exactly how big your build is going to be, it's going to be much easier to find a suitable location. There is nothing worse than trying to cram a redstone contraption that is far more complicated than you first imagined into a space that is far too small for it. That's just a recipe for stress. But of course this tip doesn't just apply to redstone contraptions. I know for a fact that I have saved huge amounts of time building something twice, once in creative mode and once in survival mode, as opposed to trying to build it once in survival and consistently getting it wrong. For example, over here we've got the graphics card that I built for Exuma Void. Over there we've got some tunnel designs. Right off in the distance we've got the TNT shop that I recently built in Hermitcraft Series 4 that's just in the process of loading in. Down there we've got the communal rubbish exchange from Hermitcraft Series 3, and down there we've got the evil science lab. All of these things were planned out in creative mode and then built in survival mode. So now let's move on to resources. Resources are obviously a hugely important part of building big projects in Minecraft because generally speaking, big projects require big amounts of resources. Now for me personally, it is always better to gather resources before, not during the building of a big project, because there's nothing worse than getting into the swing of things, building away, having a great time, then thinking, oh, I've actually run out of comparators, or I've run out of redstone torches, I'm now going to have to go all the way back over to my base, pick up those things, and come all the way back, and you sort of lose your flow, you lose rhythm, and if you're working on a really tall project or something like that, you're going to have to mine all the way down and all the way back up. It's just a massive time waster, so I would always suggest gathering up all the resources you need before starting work on the project. Now I know what you're thinking, Mumbo, how on earth am I meant to work out how many resources to gather if I have no idea how many resources this project is actually going to take? Now there are two ways to work out how many resources you're actually going to need. One of them is slightly more accurate than the other. Number one is to use your brain and basically try your best to think of how many resources this project is going to take. Now obviously this can be wildly inaccurate, chances are you're going to get very wrong indeed, but it's definitely better than not doing it at all. Number two is a tiny bit more scientific. If you have been following this video accordingly, you have built your entire project in a creative world. Now what you have to do is hop into MC Edit. I'll put a link to that one down in the description. It's an incredibly useful tool and you should download it if you haven't got it already. What you need to do is you need to highlight the entire area and click the Analyze button. Now what that will do is it will tell you all of the blocks that are inside that selected box, every single one of them, all of the redstone, the repeaters, everything. And you need to write all of those things down and you need to gather all of those items. Now of course I would suggest getting more than it actually says on there, because the chances are if you're a little bit like me you'll end up losing a couple of them, but that is the number to aim for and it will give you the exact quantity of resources you need to build the project. Finally, just over 5 minutes into this video, we're going to be taking our first steps in the survival world, and we're going to be getting started with this project. And the first thing you've got to do is all of the clearing necessary. I know you found a suitable location for the project and the build, but unfortunately there's probably some things in the way. There could be some terraforming to do, maybe some trees in the location, or there could be a massive mountain that you have to take down, or if you're like me, you're building it underground, in which case you have to dig out a really big hole. Whatever your situation is, this is probably the time to do it, because otherwise it's going to be obstructing your build. This next step may or may not be necessary depending on how smart you are. If you're a smart person, you have been placing all the resources that you've been gathering for the project in chests next to where your big project is going to be built. If you're not a smart person like myself, you've been placing those resources in your storage system and you're now going to have to move them from your storage system over to where your big project is going to be built. Now there is no point in leaving them in the storage system and saying, hey, I'll just go back and forth, because you are going to be going back and forth far more than you expect to, and you'll end up wasting a ton of time. So always set up a temporary storage system where you're going to be doing your build. Now it is time to chuck on your building hat and boots and work out where you're going to be starting this thing. Now I guess this goes without saying, but it always pays to be logical about this decision. For example, if you're building a house, don't start with a roof. Okay, that's absolutely ridiculous. Now it's not always going to be as clear cut as that. For example, if you're building a redstone contraption, it's not always 100% obvious where you should actually start that thing. The only thing that I would suggest with redstone contraptions is try your best to avoid locking yourself out from certain areas, especially if you're going to have to work on those areas in the future, because there's nothing worse than breaking through your redstone contraption to get to an area to work on that redstone contraption. It's just frustrating. So after all of this pre-build work, we are finally placing in blocks and the project is coming together. Now the first thing that I would suggest is, if the project is in fact massive, obviously take breaks relatively frequently. You don't want to be working on this thing for 42 hours straight, because A, you're going to get burnt out, and B, that really is bad for your health. Get to a point where you can actually start again, stop right there, and then come back to it in the next couple hours or so. Next top tip is to always use scaffolding blocks that are significantly different from the ones that you're using in your build. Now this is especially important with decorative builds such as big houses and things like that, because you pop up to the top using your scaffolding, maybe you jump down or you miss a few scaffolding blocks, and then suddenly they look like they're part of the build and you don't know what blocks to remove, and you could end up looking just a tiny bit silly. Now this also sort of applies to redstone creations. If you're using scaffolding inside your circuitry, there's a chance that you'll block off certain entrances, and most importantly, you'll still look stupid. So this is just a lesson in not looking stupid. Also, you should always remember that as of Minecraft 1.9, we have been given the opportunity to use the other hand of the Minecraft player. Now this sort of ties into my next point of always lighting up your builds, because torches are a fantastic offhand item. You can just chuck them around whenever you really feel like it, and you don't really have to think about it. Or alternatively, you could put a frequently used item in the other hand, and then have, for example, your pickaxe in your right hand, and you can do your work like that. It really does depend on how you play. Another good idea is to have a bed next to your big project for 3 reasons. Number 1, it resets your spawn, so if you die, you will respawn there. Number 2 is that you can sleep so that the mobs go away, because mobs, when you're working on a big project, is always a massive pain in the backside. And number 3 is rain. Rain in Minecraft is rubbish. It's horrible, it's distracting, it makes a terrible noise. Just sleep in the bed, and that will pass. It's always a good idea. One good thing to do when you're working on your big project is to distract yourself with music or potentially really awesome YouTubers that are absolutely amazing. For example, this guy right here. I mean, he seems pretty great. I would suggest checking out his videos, maybe putting them on while you're working on your big project, because A, it acts as inspiration, and B, it allows you to watch something whilst also doing something, and it makes the time pass a lot quicker. And if you do find yourself getting bored, maybe it's a good idea to either take a break or potentially work on another project. It's always good to have multiple options in terms of projects are concerned with your survival worlds, because then you always have something fresh to work on, and you don't end up getting burnt out on the thing that you've been doing for the past couple weeks. So now your big project is finished. Congratulations, you have done everything, and it is now time to wrap everything up and seal everything away. Complete the deal, basically. Now before you remove all of the scaffolding and you shut off everything that's going on behind there, you want to double and triple check that everything is correct, because there's nothing worse than thinking that you're finished and then noticing that something is slightly wrong, or you're missing something, or potentially your redstone isn't quite working properly due to a mistake that you've made. So triple, quadruple, pentillion check. It's probably a good idea. Then it is time to break all of the chests, transport the items back over to your storage system, and clean up the area around the project, because the chances are you've spent hours upon hours on this thing, and you want it to be looking good. You don't want it to be looking rough around the edges. You want people to be able to see that you've put a lot of time and effort into this, and that's not going to be the case if there's blocks everywhere and there's holes all over the place. Just make it look nice. Once all of that is done, everything is sealed up, the scaffolding has been removed, the surrounding area looks absolutely lovely. Congratulations, you have finished your big project. It's always a very good feeling when this happens, so now it is time to celebrate. You need to do a little dance in the chair, perhaps wave your hands around, call downstairs for your mum, get her to come upstairs and check out your build. She's probably not going to care particularly very much, but you know, you just want to show it to someone, and if you're on a multiplayer server, obviously that's considerably easier, because you can call over everyone on the server and be like, hey, check out the brand new build that I've just done, and hopefully they're just as excited as you are. But anyway, I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope that your big projects are successful, but unfortunately that's all I've got time for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please sure to hit that like button, and if you really loved it, then make sure to subscribe. But thanks for watching, guys. This has been Mumbo, and I'm out. I'll see you later.